Just to let all of you know, this was filmed in the video game Jurassic World Evolution 2, which is a Jurassic Park/World game, so most of the dinosaurs are inaccurate, but this is the only game where I could do something like a documentary, so you're gonna have to deal with it. And also, if you want to learn more about the Kem Kem group and the creatures that are featured in this episode, I've left links to the Wikipedia articles in the description. Alright, on to the video. Cretaceous Morocco in the Kem Kem group. This is an Afrotapejara. This flock of Afrotapejara have been roaming the deserts of the Kem Kem group in order to find a new oasis to stay at. But sadly, they have to treat this oasis as a pit stop, as this oasis only has water and no fish. So it is only possible for these Afrotapejara to rest and drink so they have enough energy for their next flight. And after a long rest, the flock of Afrotapejara decide to wander the deserts of the Kem Kem group once again in order to find an oasis that can sustain them. The Afrotapejara finally find an oasis, but they are unsure if this oasis has any fish. Thankfully, the Afrotapejara have to no longer worry about there being no fish, as once they flew over the oasis, they spotted some. Most of the Afrotapejara immediately go to hunting for fish, as most of them have not eaten in a week. But little do they know, another pterosaur already owns this oasis. A pterosaur larger than Afrotapejara, Ornithocherius. And Ornithocherius is a more territorial species of pterosaur. So this Ornithocherius and his friends are not liking the new company. And only minutes after the Afrotapejara arrive, chaos ensues, and several fights start. Sadly, both sides had several casualties, but the Afrotapejara flock was affected the most out of the two species, as the Afrotapejara flock consisted of originally 10 Afrotapejara, but now only 2 managed to get away. And now, those 2 Afrotapejara are stuck wandering the deserts of the Kem Kem group once again to try and find another oasis. Like I said earlier, Ornithocherius is larger than Afrotapejara, but there are much larger pterosaurs here in the Kem Kem group, such as Alanqa. This Alanqa has traveled to a circle-shaped island called an atoll in order to catch some of its favorite fish for lunch. The Alanqa starts to fish. And after a long fishing session, the Alanqa decides to rest on the atoll for a while. And as you can see, there's also a couple small herbivores on this atoll. They most likely got here from being transported by driftwood or got knocked unconscious near the coast during a storm and washed up here. Back on the mainland, another Alanqa decides to look to the forest for its lunch. The Alanqa spots a small herbivorous dinosaur. After eating, the Alanqa decided to rest further into the forest. But little does the Alanqa know, there's a predator stalking it. The Alanqa now lies dead on the forest floor. The culprit. A predatory dinosaur named Sauroniops. The Sauroniops proceeds to eat from the dead Alanqa that it just killed. The Sauroniops now decides to travel back to his mate in order to give her a few chunks of food that he has stored in his mouth. Sometime later, the male Sauroniops has finally came back with the food. And now with the male Sauroniops being finished with his food, the female Sauroniops decides to finish the rest. The female decides to go check to see what the male is doing. The female is now asleep, while the male is also trying to sleep. The male has now finally fallen asleep too. Later on in the day, the female is still sleeping, but the male has decided to go back out and hunt for more food. Around 20 minutes later, the female Sauroniops hears a sound that no Sauroniops wants to hear, or any creature that lives in the Kem Kem group for that matter. She looks around in the forest and sniffs the air to make sure the source of the loud roar is nowhere close by. And as soon as she heard that second roar, she knew she had to run in order to alert the male to the incoming danger. The apex predator of the Kem Kem group. Carcharodontosaurus. However, it is quite peculiar that the Carcharodontosaurus is in the forest, as Carcharodontosaurus usually stay out in the open deserts of the Kem Kem group. But luckily, whatever the Carcharodontosaurus is doing, it doesn't involve chasing down the Sauroniops. After a while of walking through the forest, the Carcharodontosaurus has now entered a swamp. On the Carcharodontosaurus' journey through the swamp, he eventually passes by a Spinosaurus. But the two do not fight, as that would be wasting energy. And the two carnivores have no reason to, as they go for different prey. The Spinosaurus likes to hunt for fish, while the Carcharodontosaurus likes to eat larger dinosaurs. Spinosaurus is one of the few, mostly aquatic dinosaurs known. The Spinosaurus begins to hunt for its favorite type of fish. The fish's name is diplomystus. The Spinosaurus lets out a mating call, which we are able to hear some of the roar, but most of it is so low-pitched that we can't hear it. And that low-pitched roar can be heard for miles. Sometime later, a female Spinosaurus enters the area. And even after all the male's efforts, the female declines. The female Spinosaurus wanders further into the swamp. Around an hour later, the Carcharodontosaurus has reached the outskirts of the swamp. The Carcharodontosaurus smells something. And that smell has caused the Carcharodontosaurus to adventure into a canyon. And in the next part, you'll find out what that smell is. And you'll learn about many more new things.